we're going to talk about systemic racism. It's been around for years, centuries, forever.
Decades.
In our
Just
lives.
the beginning of the
Centuries are longer than decades, yo.
Well, we skipped one. We skipped one.
Hey yo,
We skipped
this
one.
podcast is about niggas learning. All right,
You skipped one. You gotta say decade.
I mean, I think us saying centuries skip decades.
Oh, shut the hell up. We
All
ain't got
right.
time for this.
So the question is, what is it? Where does it come from? Why does it still exist? How does it affect our day-to-day lives? So let's just really just start this conversation off and see where it goes. I'm pretty sure it will be a great one. So Sonny, systemic racism, like, what does that mean to you?
I guess like me working in corporate America, I think I can just generate my own, I guess, definition of it.
Yeah.
I think it's like something that like you can't really see it, you feel it. You can tell about how you naturally, like how you can naturally interact in certain environments that are primarily populated by, white people.
Yeah.
How you carry yourself, how you interact is really dictated about what's comfortable to them. And then you don't really, like, how you have, what's it called? Code switching. In which you act a certain way when you go to work, but then when you come home and you're comfortable and you're around people that you're around your homeboys,
Your voice
you
drop
act
a couple
different.
octaves.
Right.
That's a good point.
You go from, hey, Mr. Johnson, like, hey, what's good, my nigga?
Yeah. So why do you do that? Yeah, I feel that.
But it's almost something like, in our culture, it's almost like when you go to this job interview, when you go to here, you need to act a certain way. You need to do this, do that, in order to, get by and actually progress in this system, So that's how I would kind of define it,
That's a good one. Dre, you got any?
I'm gonna keep it light for now. I'm gonna just say, well, number one, there's no need to put the prefix systemic in front of racism because racism, by definition, is a system. Right. I guess it's founded on like I'm not gonna say the hatred, but the devaluing of a minority group by a majority group, which in America, at least, it's white people.
Tiki Torch.
Not necessarily tiki torch. It could be even the bougie whites. They racist too.
They just don't tell you.
Yeah,
Right,
it's just it's just systemic in a way where it's everything that they do is centered around devaluing minorities. And at this point, with us being like 400 years in the game in America, a lot of it's subtle, and it's kind of like
A lot of it's subtle.
it's subtle, and it's kind of we've all learned it, so we don't really think of it as racism anymore. It's kind of normal behavior.
I think it's like, you said 400 years in the game. I think it's like we're asked to forgive and forget about our trauma as opposed to other cultures, as opposed to other people. Like, when they talk about the Holocaust, never forget, 9/11, never forget, slavery. Oh, that was so many years ago. That's another thing. It just seems like, oh, well, things are different now.
Well, you got to remember that the Holocaust wasn't about race. It was against Jews, which is not a race, it's a religion. So,
Well, technically,
it's not a race.
it was signed in recently.
Since when did Jews become
He signed it in like a couple weeks ago.
Jews are
Who
not
was
a race,
they?
so I don't care who the fuck they is.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like
It's
they
like
signed
saying-
that in.
it's like saying
I'm
Muslims
not disagreeing
are
with you.
a race
I'm
of
just-
people. That's not a race of people.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying.
What are Jews based off of? Judaism?
No.
That's a religion. It's not a.
God damn it! I just said.
Do Do you have any thoughts on systemic racism?
Actually, just to piggyback, more of a fucking rant, really, off of what Darden was saying. Just like
That's not his name on this podcast.
Oh, I'm sorry. Nobody knows that. I'm sorry.
Good for one.
We're good for one. I'm sorry.
time
I'm sorry,
to say this
Sonny.
man's name.
I'm not used to calling him Sonny. I'm not used to calling him Sonny. Anyway, just
used
to
to
like,
it,
shut the fuck. Anyway, just to piggyback off what he was saying, like I recently went through something like that, like just going through like the whole. I gotta change my voice because I'm very mellow tone or whatever, and it was like I was told at the work office like you gotta be like super hyped and like a goddamn jackrabbit. And I was like, yo, that's not me. And for the simple fact of like I did it, and then like somebody really like a customer or whatever really just came to me and was just like, dog, don't ever do that shit again because that is not you. And just to have
Not
to
being
like,
yourself.
yeah, right. So and just coming from a corporate aspect, like they don't want you to be yourself. Like they frown on it. Like you lose opportunities because of that. And I'm just like, whatever, I'm gonna rock out. Like I pulled myself up my own bootstraps, so I don't need anybody for nothing. But that's just where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and even with that, like, since we're having that conversation corporate, they want to know if you can fit into their culture.
Yeah.
That is one thing that is always said, no matter where you go, whatever major corporation, culture, not only can you do the job, are you qualified, but can you fit into our culture? Will we like you here, basically? Can you fit in? Can you make us like you?
And honestly, it's more about them liking you versus you being able to do the job.
concept.
They don't really care if you're competent. If they like you, they'll still hire you even if you're not competent.
And what you was saying, like that honestly, when you said culture in the sense that you were saying, it made me think of system. Like,
Right, yeah,
do
you
you
gotta fit
fit
with
in
the
our
nation.
system?
Because that's what
Yeah.
a culture is. It's like how a group of people move, how they act. It's their way of life within a certain group of people. So
Yeah.
it's always systemic.
Nah, that was a really good point, Sonny. So let's King Frank Mayo. I know you have a strong background in politics. Yeah. So what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah. So again, like system, the context of system is very important, right? And you want to be able to see things for reality and what they are, and definitely be able to interpret and put in the forefront history and law go together. When we're talking about a system, we're talking about law, right? Because that's how injustices are rendered, like, you know what I'm saying, through like these statutes that they create. And you just want to be able to distinguish reality from what's being propagated. So, for example, the first thing I look at when I'm trying to identify systemic racism, I look at the atmosphere in America, right? You want to be able to differentiate between America and United States because they're not one and the same. America is a continent, North, Central, South America. American states are Choctaw, Iroquois, Cherokee, Saponi, Blackfoot. We know these things because we learned this shit in school. United States is a European colony, right? Maryland being one of the first 13 colonies. Mm-hmm. So, number one, they're not American. It's systematic that you think that they're American in the forefront. That's an issue.
I just want you to slow down because this nigga preaching.
Yeah.
Nigga's preaching.
You better take them.
But that's number one. So now you're confusing, immigrants from Europe as Americans when they're not. You know what I'm saying? If it was as genuine as it's supposed to be, we would be governed by the actual American people, and not by just Trump being a Scottish German dude.
Yeah.
Colonizers.
You feel me? Right, exactly. Colonizers. And that's the definition of a colonizer. They go to a foreign country and they finance off the land of the people. You know what I'm saying? So that's the system that they're imposing. That's a system that operates. So when you're talking about trying to find a system, that's its base, 'cause that's its nature, number one, right? And then again, like I know I spoke to her earlier, my mother always talking about the definitions of certain words, very important. For example, within their context, within their culture, they want to identify us by terms like colored, Negro, black, African American, right? But through in humanity, people are not diversified like that. In humanity and human rights, people are diversified by nationalities. In the Constitution,
Yeah, I heard like outside
for
the United States, it's really other countries don't really have races.
Right.
It's just where you from.
Exactly. And for the Constitution for the United States, 1791, people are diversified by nationality. And the root word of nationality is nation. So whatever your nationality is, you better point to a map and say, yo, that's a nation. Jamaican, Jamaica. Somalian, Somalia. You know what I'm saying? German, Germany. Moroccan, Morocco. Right? There's no nation on the planet called black.
Yeah, and I heard I
African American
forgot
is
where
two
I heard
continents.
this from, but that's why a lot of black people are kind of lost because we don't have a nation to
Right. So
tie ourselves to.
exactly. So the terms that they gave us, they denote chattel property. So when you fill out an application and you see black, African American, you're identifying yourself on that paper when you check that bitch off as chattel property. And that's a system. So now you're a commodity to the system as opposed to a natural person. And that's the issue because commodities and property don't have rights.
And that's literally
Natural
like
people do it.
that's like an everyday type of thing. You're gonna fill out those surveys, and it's gonna say, "What do you identify as? Black, Asian, white?" Like that's an everyday
And
type
yeah.
of thing that somebody's gonna go.
And you got to know the definition of it. For
Right.
example, if you look in a law dictionary, and that's something we never grew up with, right? A law dictionary. And this is reality. I'll paint the picture for you, right? So, a law dictionary, my favorite one is the 4th edition by Henry Campbell Black, right? Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. The definition of color is the apparent right, but legally insufficient. As in, anything that's colored, as that adjective applied to it, is something that appears to have rights, but legally
But
insufficient.
actually
So we say
Yeah.
colored person. That means that person may appear to have rights, but legally they don't.
Nah.
Right? Legally they they nothing. Right? And then we look at the definition of white, right? In the same context. Right? I asked you to Google who's considered white, and I'm gonna give you
got
two
it.
different definitions. You got the census definition.
Yeah.
Read the census definition of what a white person is.
The Census Bureau defines white people as follows. Whites refer to a person having origins in any of the original people of Europe, the Middle East, North Africa. It includes people who indicate their race as white or reported entries such as German, Latin, Lebanese, Arab, Moroccan, and or Caucasian.
Right. So, Moroccan, right? In North Africa, original people, right? People that look like us. And my nationality is Moroccan, right? So, I'm considered a white person by the Constitution
census.
definition, by the census, not only the census, but the constitutional definition of what it is, because the term white person derives from the term free white person from this Act of 1790, Naturalization Act of 1790, right? And naturalized means the applications of native privilege. So to give privilege to somebody as if you are a native to this continent. Moroccans are natives, are indigenous to the continent, but we also have, Moors from different territories of the empire, and they come from like the kingdom, for example, over in North Africa, right? So if you're immigrating here, you fit the criteria to have a native privilege, right? So that's what that shit means. And in the original definition, in the fourth edition of the dictionary, law dictionary, it'll tell you that term was not applied to the Caucasian race or the Aryan race. The definition that you see on the census that includes Caucasians, that was an amendment that happened in like 1840 or 1860 or something like that. So I said that to say this. The Black's Law Dictionary 4th edition was published in 1968. That's the same year that Martin Luther King was assassinated. But remember back then, niggas ain't had no access to no dictionaries or no libraries or no books, right? So they didn't have this context. But to visualize it, if you see a water fountain, right, and you see one they say white and one they say colored, the system was to condition you to accept them as white people and identify them as white people, and for you to identify yourselves as a colored person through threat, duress, and coercion of people getting shot, getting lynched, getting you know what I'm saying. So out of fear, you go into that colored water fountain, and now you identifying as somebody who
doesn't have any rights.
exactly.
God damn.
And then now you identifying them as a white person, which means they have native privilege. But remember, the colonists, they're not native. They were never meant to have native privileges at all. The Constitution was put in place to keep the colonists within a certain regulation, like because they're an enterprise. So like the companies and all this shit. The Constitution was put in place to keep them within this particular structure. They acted outside of that, they were in violation of the Constitution, and they had to go back to Europe. But that's the system, inherent system that we're dealing with. So when we approach the concept of like systemic racism, and we only touch it on like skin color and shit like that, you're not really getting to the root of it.
That's not enough.
And they entertain that conversation, but they're really comfortable with it.
Because that's the
Right.
easy part.
Yeah,
It's
that's
easy.
a conversation you want people to have because it's not really going.
Because once you delve into it, like how you said, like where a lot of these people they claim that they white, and by definition they really not.
Right.
No,
It
people
ruins
claim that
it
they
ruins
black.
their whole standpoint.
Right. But once you kind of get the concept, you see it everywhere. Like for
Yeah.
example, they say Mexicans are immigrants.
No, they're not
No,
because
they Native
Mexicans
American.
are Native Americans. We just made them
How
Mexican.
how the fuck can they immigrate to where they from?
Exactly.
Right. They stole Texas from them, or they stole that.
Which is so
territory
funny
from them
because I
and
saw a tweet
incorporated
today
as
that
Texas.
said Mexico was planning on shutting the border down between the United States and America, not the United States and Mexico. I quoted on it. I was like, they should have did this 300 years ago because they're a little too late for that.
And now we talking about systemic racism.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
You know
That's
what I'm saying?
crazy.
But yeah, that's my take on this shit.
Yeah. So I wanted to just touch on the types of systemic racism that's kind of common now and today. I saw an article and it listed out 7 areas. So I'm gonna list out the 7, and we can, maybe digest one of them, go in details of one of them, wherever we can relate to it. But these 7, which is the wealth gap, that's obvious. That's obvious. Education, employment, the criminal justice system, the housing system, the surveillance system, and the healthcare system. And the one that was interesting for me, I even think of being a system, is surveillance. As in, a black person might go into a store and, they get watched more, or, they are more likely to be tailored to what they're actually doing inside of a place compared to the white counterpart. But, what are y'all, how do y'all feel about these types, or, the current aspect of racism?
I would definitely say, just from like you were saying, like on a hospital aspect of it, especially for like women, like they go heavy to like inject all women with certain things that, for me, I'm pretty sure it was the same.
We did a home birth, my nigga.
Yeah, but he did a home
He didn't
birth.
have to deal with the house.
They didn't have that. But for me, like, I was like, nah. Like, there is no you doing this and doing that. It's because, just doing your own research, you just figure out, like, this shit ain't for us. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and it's just a way to keep you coming back if something were to fuck up. But they don't actually...
They don't treat you.
They don't treat you any differently. Like, I'll never forget... I stepped out of a room for a little bit, and I see my wife in tears. I was like, yo, what's going on? Like, they treated my son a totally different way when it came to this hearing test versus the white baby that went in there. And I, stepped to them appropriately and just like, yo, like, what are y'all doing? And then I was like, y'all got to redo that. And I saw what they were doing. Like, they ripped the hearing joints off his ear, and they like ripped his hair a little bit. And I was like, yo, like, nah. But then I saw like through the glass, because they have a glass, they was nice and wrapped them up and had them like, like, I'm just like, yo, don't.
They feel like they can get away with that.
Yeah, but
they can get away with that.
But because I was there, for the simple fact that most of our women that go into, if they have their babies in the hospital, don't have a father there, so they just kind of go with it.
Yeah.
And those are just certain things just to watch out for.
Yo, just to cut in there, I think for me that's the biggest gap I see. Like, it's not necessarily, I mean, all those things are valid, right? But I think one of the biggest gaps is just how we protect our women, right? Because every other
Don't protect that one.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
Every other woman out here, from whatever nationality or background that they have, they got their own police force for themselves. They got their own territory. They got their own military, their own government system for them, right? When it comes to the, like, standing up for ours, niggas go as far as, like, assigning some markers. You know what I'm saying? Niggas ain't really out here doing what's necessary to the standard of everybody else.
I mean, to show you, even in America, women were the last people to get the right to vote.
Right, but that's our issue. But that's and again, like we had a conversation earlier, that's with the colonists. I don't give a fuck what they do.
But I'm saying, if we was brought up under them, if they don't value it, and we taught to value what they value, if they don't value women, how will we ever learn to value women?
Right. But at this point, at some point, like,
Let that go.
you gotta let go what they teaching you.
Yeah,
because what they teaching
I'm
ain't-
with you, but I'm saying for the rest of these niggas,
Right. Well, this is the turning point. Or, like, again, just introducing the conversation. That's why we have this conversation. Let's
Right.
change the narrative. Like, there needs to be a narrative where what is the standard of protecting our women, and we need our women to be tough on us and demand that from us. But we gotta also, redefine manhood or what it means to be a protector and a provider at the same time, because it can't be what it is right now, because it doesn't suffice. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It doesn't hit the bar.
I think we have to, like, it's not just about learning, it's about unlearning certain things that have been put into us over hundreds of years.
That's a good point.
So that's brainwashing. That's literally brainwashing, like a certain mindset. Like if you teach somebody over and over again repetitively to be a certain way, to think a certain way about yourself, it's like you have to think from the mindset of, if you've been taken from your name, if you've been taught that, hey, you as somebody with this skin tone, we're not going to allow you to read. We're not going to allow you to enjoy certain privileges that we as lighter tone people enjoy. And then we impose this over hundreds of years. We have to unlearn and then relearn. Like we have to, I guess to allude to what you're saying, we have to hold one another accountable.
Right. Yeah. Because I'm going to ask y'all this. How many of us at this table know that we descend from kings and queens? Y'all know that shit?
I would say all of us at the table.
Yeah, y'all know that shit, right? Yeah. So if that's something that you identify with, you gotta, like you said, unlearn the whole slavery mentality. You know what I'm saying? If you want to fill in those gaps and supersede those gaps, you gotta go back to that mind state. And as a king or a sultan or whatever, you gotta look at like, yo, okay, if I'm a king or a sultan, what nation do I rule over? What territories do I have? What treaties did my ancestors have in place with what nations and why? What was going on? And once we start to dive into and learn that, you kind of start to figure out, what footsteps we need to take as a people, right? Because everybody else does it every day. China does it every day. You can turn on the news and see other people doing it every day. So it's not like the example isn't there. It's not like the example of the U.S. or the colonizers or people that oppress us is the only example that we have to learn from. You know what I'm saying? It's just a choice of the model that you want to
how would you choose to walk in?
Right. Just stop looking at the fucking slave
complacency?
Huh?
So in your opinion, do you see complacency, amongst people that look like yourself,
against
like,
certain,
like comfort, complacency?
Yeah.
Within
Too
certain countries, I say they are complacent in Europe. I mean, the ones that we have problems with the most, like Russia, China, all the people that buck whatever we say, they not living in complacency. They know who they come from. It's like China. They still going off their calendar from 5,000 years ago.
It's way too much complacency. And I think it's just, if I'm just being brutally honest, I think it's just being soft. Because look at it like this. If I'm sitting across the table from a Chinese ambassador, right? Just because we're talking about China right now. If I'm sitting across the table from a Chinese ambassador, he got his own interests in mind, right? He got the Chinese Republic in his mind. He got their businesses and their corporations, their economy. He got all their interests in mind. And if I'm representing my nation, and he's not going out his way to put my nation at the top of the international market, that doesn't make him a racist. You know what I'm saying? That makes him an ambassador for his country. So why the fuck? Because Europeans and the colonizers look out for themselves, why does that make them racist? That's just the nature of nations. That's how it works. You know what I'm saying? You got to stop being soft and stop asking them to put us to the top. Nobody does that for anybody.
No one's going to put someone else on the top.
Right? Yeah. So let me stop being soft and let me be tough enough to stand at a table and look you dead in your eye and say, I don't care how you feel, really. But if you want to do business with because we got a buying power of what? We got a GDP. Right. Yeah. If we were once we become our own autonomous
one of the biggest
body politic, our GDP is
if not the biggest,
roof.
One of the biggest.
Right? So what you're saying is it's not about right and wrong, it's about negotiation.
Diplomacy, exactly. Negotiation, right? And be able to leverage your productivity in the international market, right? And that's what the fuck we and that's I feel like that's what cuts down that gap in all of those areas.
And just to piggyback off what you were saying, I think me and Cal was talking about this maybe a while ago, maybe a month ago, about like the whole thing as far as reparations and things of that nature. Like that's us asking for something. You know what I mean? Especially when in order to get that we have to be designated or assigned a certain nationality or whatever to get it.
Right.
And unfortunately, African American is not our nationality because I'm not sure.
Because it's not one.
It's not one. It's literally a combination of two names.
Right. And just to give you, just to fill that part in again, so etymology is the science of studying words and the origin, how they change over time. So to find the etymon of a word is the true definition, the literal meaning of a word. So if you study the etymology of terms like African American, Black, Negro, you're going to find that its origin derives from Moor and Moroccan. So how slavery really happened, it was this holy war between Islamic cultures and nations and countries and Christian nations and countries, right? So when we sacked their ships or sacked their villages, that's where we made slaves out of them. We did that shit for 700 years. But when they captured us, they made slaves out of us as well. And that's how you got to where niggas is right now. You know what I'm saying? So you got to look at it on the reality of its playing field. Even the history of Maryland was founded on European slavery because the Charter of Maryland was issued in 1632 from King Charles to the Baron of Baltimore. The Baron of Baltimore was originally the Baron of Baltimore, Ireland. Baltimore was a town that originated in Ireland. That's Article 2 of the Maryland Charter. And in 1631, a group of Ottomans, Moroccans, Algerians, and a German pirate, we sacked that Baltimore Kingdom of Ireland, and we enslaved and depopulated the whole town and enslaved them.
With all that, also come to this workshop that's going to be happening.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Make sure y'all come to this goddamn workshop.
So, but that's the thing though. So we businessmen now, right? Yeah. That's the culture that we thriving in. That you know, something like even hip hop, how we diversified and we have so much leverage and so much just marketing power, right? How we want to use it to just empower ourselves. Again, I found it in my own ventures. It's so much power that I've when I sit down at a table with somebody from another nationality or another race or whatever, and I'm able to have these conversations. I've told Europeans to their face, like, yo, I know we've enslaved you too. But when you kind of even that playing field, now you've neutralized any sense of privilege over there, right? So now it's man to man. Now we having a conversation about how can we work together, how can we compromise, how can we both win from this shit? Because it's not about being above them either. You know what I'm saying? It's really about
coming together, united.
You just can't put me down.
Exactly.
You can't oppress me because it can go one or two ways with that. You know what I'm saying? At this point, you can go any way with that. You know what I'm saying? I got a son. You can go any way with that, right?
Right.
He got to have a future. I got a wife. It can go any way with that, right? So let's find a solution that works for the both of us. You know what I'm saying? I feel like our people have so much potential, and we'll be the best at, creating those solutions.
Yeah,
because we compromise too much. Like we give too much away.
Right now.
Yeah.
But we're seeing examples of where we're not though. Like I've seen it, and again, people like Hove or something like you see it in certain places, right? Where you can see even Obama. You see certain things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you can kind of learn from what they did, and you can tweak it.
And I also think that people gotta realize that we have the nature of business is compromising. So people get really upset, like with Obama. They're like, "Oh, he didn't do nothing." It's like, all right, you got to think that he's the man, the leader of a nation of 65% white people and the rest minorities. There's no way that he's going to be able to do like 100% for the 35 and not pay attention to the 65%.
What I would like to go into is when we was talking about solutions, and the concept of community building, but bigger than that, nation building, and like how would that be a form of a solution within our own community for real?
I think it's just a mentality. You know, I think the agenda and the attention has everything to do with it. For example, if we're talking quote unquote black businesses, if I give me like 3-5, quote unquote black businesses that you feel like we need to create, typically you're gonna hear something like a bank, like a grocery store, like just the typical things,
basics.
right? The basics, but we don't think of in terms of like a municipality, right? A municipality, Baltimore is a municipality. Right,
Yeah.
a municipality on paper is when 300 or more people come together to govern themselves. They petition for an ordinance and they set up their own regulations, to govern themselves, whether it be tax and everything like that. They got a whole kind of assembly and everything like that. Why isn't one of our steps to have a municipal corporation?
Yeah.
Right, it's a business. You know what I'm saying? But that way, there's a sense of autonomy there. You know what I'm saying? But it's just looking at solutions on these spectrums, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like it's easy to get there once we realize that that's our agenda. You know what I'm saying? Because we've been able, we could accomplish so fucking much, and we've done it.
Do you think that we don't do that out of fear? Because I think the last time we had something like that as I guess black people in America, it was back like in the 20s. Yeah.
I feel like we don't have a unified goal. I feel like, especially recently, we talk about a black agenda, especially when we're talking about politics, right?
Yeah.
And we talk about political candidates. Like, what is your black agenda? Do we have one as a people? Like, what is our agenda? Do we have something ourselves before we can ask a politician to, appease what we want as a people? Do we have an idea of what we want?
Do we have goals for ourselves?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Because again, you don't want to be in a position where you're asking for anything.
Well,
Right.
I agree with you, but I think the biggest thing is leadership and the concept of the idea of we needing a leader, a defined leader, and the concept of false leadership.
Lead us to what?
Leaders to,
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, when you're trying to build a bigger collective, I feel like it has to be someone or another group that's really charging it.
Well, yeah, because think of it. We haven't had a profound black leader since Martin Luther King. That was.
I mean, yeah, you can argue Obama,
50
but I
years
feel
ago.
like
I
his
don't
position.
think he was a black leader. I think
Yeah.
he was a politician.
Yeah, his position was definitely bigger.
I guess having a goal in mind would be more of a top priority. Like you have to have a goal. If you have a leader with no goal, then where is he leading you to?
That's true.
I kind of think we should take it a little further than that. I mean, I know we're getting on the conversation of how do you build a nation, correct? I think in a lot of ways, we systemically reach out to other nations to build our own, but we should only, technically speaking, reach out to ourselves. And it goes further than that, in my opinion. Not to be I'm pretty sure somebody's gonna say some shit, but whatever. But I feel like let's start from in a home aspect. For me, I've always seen, and I can't really testament to everybody else, but for me, I've always seen the black home as a mother, father, this, that, and the third. How does that look if we're trying to build a nation, if we're mixing together with other nations to build our own? I think if we think whole spectrally a little bigger than that, if we not just to say stay in our own lane, but we have to procreate with each other to figure out where do we go and branch out from here, because from history of time we've always mixed ourselves with other nations to fix our own problem, where the problem isn't just let's just scratch them out, let's just pretend they weren't even here. What do we do if we're together?
Getting our own internal affairs in order.
Correct. Right.
And then you can start moving out, doing treaties, doing
Right. Because even before,
FBIs and
I'm pretty sure our great grandmothers or whatever, if they're still around, was you better not come in here with this person and this, that, and the third.
So
I really
you
feel
just straight up saying
that
the
love is-
interracials.
you do what you want, but I'm just saying in order to build a nation, you have to have. I feel like you can't say you for that nation and you're not with that nation.
I
in
think-
some
hear you.
aspect.
I think
Like-
that's a good conversation for another episode. For real, for real.
Right, and I hear you. I just feel like that. I think that's more so. Our issue is not really much of an issue for
Correct.
other people, only because in order to do that, they would have to be doing it too. You
Hey,
understand?
exactly. No, I'm not. Of course, not. I'm not saying that, but that's what I'm saying. Like, we have to be able to see like the beauty in ourselves. Like, we don't see that. Like, we're always reaching out to something else. Where
Now, do you think that people like intermingle within other races because they don't see the beauty in themselves, or because
I
There are
think
examples of that.
I think-
There are
I
a
think-
lot
I
of
think there are examples of that. There's also examples of the opposite, where it's not necessarily because you don't like the way that black people look. You just also find other people attractive. I think it's natural to find something foreign attractive because it's not normal.
I think
it's just easier.
I think the examples that are projected out there in media create additional situations like that. Like, there could be a situation in which, you know, a white woman, a black man, or a black woman or a white man, it's general love, it's genuine love, but the way that it's pushed in media, it could be like, oh, well, maybe I should date this person outside of race for this, other than outside of like genuine love. Like, that could be something that's pushed and expand. Like, media is a very powerful thing. If you put out a message and you keep on sending it out, it's going to like plant like a
It's gonna plant a seed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna plant
for sure.
seeds.
Media is a very powerful tool.
I think for me, it still falls back to regulation. So, for example, you can have an interracial relationship in the U.S., right? But in terms of that relationship, let's say they get married or something like that, it's going to fall within the regulation of the laws of the U.S. You can have an interracial relationship in China, but it's going to fall within the regulations of China and their laws, right? I think regardless of what the relationships look like, we need to have our set of laws for ourselves, by us, for us, that regulate how our culture operates. Otherwise, we're looking for the politician to make laws for us and have our best benefit, which is just not.
So
Right.
what you saying? Do you see this actually happen in the foreseeable future? Like, how do you,
Yeah.
how do
Yeah.
you feel it being organized and actually coming?
What are the
into-
steps for us to get
Yeah.
to that part where we are our own municipality, like you said?
I mean, municipalities, but even beyond municipalities and nation building. But those steps, I mean, I think it starts just from the feeling of we need a solution
We
because
done with this shit.
it be done. You gotta just cut it off, yo. And just
Yeah.
and for me, it's about respect. Like, you know what I'm saying, I come from a different kind of background. Certain things you can't do to me in the street. Like, I mean, this is a form of disrespect, and I just can't rock with you like that, right? So when people come around, for example, when it's election season coming around, you got Hillary coming around with like hot sauce.
Got
and
Sheila
shit
Dixon
like
in your
that,
neighborhood.
and dabbing
Man,
and
what?
shit like that.
Dancing with Juvenile.
Right,
This
people
is-
dancing with Juvenile, yo.
Yeah.
That's an
Yeah.
insult
Yeah.
to my intelligence, yo.
Confidence,
You don't. They don't
yeah.
go in my competency. They don't go to other nations,
That's a real.
and when they visit and
That's
insert
with the pop
themselves
stars
into their
and with the
culture
celebrities.
in that manner.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They don't have those levels of
They don't come out
conversation.
with mayonnaise in their bag.
You know what I'm saying? It's not. And
Curry.
at that point, it's like, yo, why am I even here? Like, why am I even dealing with this? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? I think when shit like that starts to happen, the only alternative is to do for self. And for me, I have a vision, right? I have a desire, not just for myself, but again for my family
Right.
and my son. And I want my son to inherit his own government. Imagine, like, we went to the same school. We went to a school where they taught history, and say it was divided. They got, you know, European kids, kids that look like us, and the European kids, when you learn about U.S. history, they're learning about them inheriting a government as they get older. They're learning about the history of a government that they're going to inherit as they get older, and the system and the structure, how it works, right? The 3 branches of government. They're learning about what they will inherit, while we learned, or they taught us, that we were slaves to it. So as they learned what they were inheriting, their own government, their own structure, their own territory, and all this other shit, we never got that.
We learned the shit we're gonna be going through.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And that's not going to happen for my child.
Yeah.
Because I know the government structures and shit of our history. So I can give him the blueprint, the infrastructure of, you know, what existed when we were sultans and kings and shit like that. But that's not enough either. at some point, we're gonna make that reality. You
Right.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the conversation like this is what start that ball fucking rolling.
Bottom line, it starts with coming to this goddamn workshop.
Hey.
That's where it
Breaking the
starts with.
silence.
Come to the workshop, getting your foundation, and then we build from there.
Yeah. Now, I think we gotta wrap this one up, man. It's been a pleasure here having this
Absolutely,
conversation
man.
with you.
Absolutely.
I kind of want to talk about the coronavirus a little bit more, yo, and just the preparation
Wash
for
your
it.
damn hands.
Wash your hands, wash your ass,
Wash your hands.
All the way down
wash
to your
yourself,
feet.
man.
No, and honestly,
Be clean.
I kind of want to we're going a couple minutes, yo.
10 feet.
Going through this coronavirus, right, and it being like a world epidemic,
Pandemic.
pandemic. Like, how do you see yourself, especially with a family? I'm gonna ask everybody this as well. In the future, like preparing for something that could be like this or even worse. Like, this is honestly, I ain't gonna say it's mild, but I feel
It's
like
mild so far.
I feel like it's a good warning to what a real pandemic could look like in the world.
Right. And we haven't seen this at its full form yet.
Yeah,
We don't know
that's-
what this
right,
is.
it's
true
just-
as
it
well.
just started.
That's true as well. So it's like, what have you had any thoughts of like how you can protect your family and protect yourselves and
Yes.
Gonna go
how-
no whole
how-
other route like we talking about
Right.
possible immunizations.
yeah,
and you
like,
know how
so-
niggas
so
don't rock
what-
with immunizations.
what's been going on in your mind with that?
I would
It gives
say.
you. Oh,
Oh, okay. All right. I would say, like, for sure, you definitely got to have money set aside. That's number one. Because regardless, the economy may or whatever, you still need to have those ducats. You feel me? And then the next thing, you always, make sure you have your food. Even if you know someone, I know for myself, I will be up in that restaurant depot. So I'm just saying, like, you just got to go, you got to get don't be out here like the rest of these crazy people buying toilet paper. Like, ain't nobody need. I don't see it. I don't understand why you need
500 rolls of toilet paper.
20 bundles of fucking toilet paper
Like
to
it's
wipe
about to go
your
on the black
ass. No
market.
one's shitting that much. Like,
have a clean ass, but sick as hell.
Honestly,
Like-
man, I ain't opposed to the toilet paper
like,
stock up.
but I'm just saying, like, you could be stocked. You could be. It's something totally different, like stocked for a couple months. But we talking about 20 bundles.
Toilet
like that.
paper is gone. All the fruits, vegetables, and vitamins are
Still
there.
there.
Yeah.
Like the
The
stuff
shit
that
that's
can
going,
help
the
you.
shit that's going to heal you is still on the shelves.
I mean, that shit go
No.
bad too, yo.
That's-
That shit go
Yeah,
bad.
eventually.
It's going to go bad, yeah.
That shit
But-
don't last that long.
Still, and make sure you got a roof over your head. Just,
Yeah.
That's like first, the three main things. Like, you gotta make sure you have those things.
I think when I think about this whole situation, like I took a completely left turn. Like what are you like? Do you know how to survive? Like, do you
Yeah.
really know how to survive? Like, for real? Like, if the world just went to shit, would you know how to really do basic things? Feed, protect. Do you really know how to do that? Like, let's say
I was a Boy Scout for 3 years.
Wow.
Does that mean anything to
Actually,
this day?
yeah, absolutely.
You got out right before they took their booty hole.
like shit, I can tell.
Yes, I did.
Scouts on them.
look, I can't even laugh too hard. I can't laugh too hard. I was also a Boy Scout.
I was a Boy Scout as well.
oh,
I
oh,
bet you
right.
was.
Oh, yeah.
Learn something
I, didn't
every
make,
day.
I was a Cub Scout, so
I went to like the
God, okay.
Eagles for real. I was up there, then I quit.
So you were a bird.
You was out there in the woods and shit. Like,
Nigga, I did
with
that
a tent?
shit.
Nah, I
Yeah.
never.
So if the world went to shit,
Which way
would
is
you
north?
really know how to take
You
care of
don't know.
yourself?
Which way is north?
What's going on? Just point to a random
The avenue right there.
God damn it.
All the time. No bullshit though.
No, that-
Man, what you saying, Darden?
I was saying, if the world really went to shit, would you really know how to take care of yourself? Would you know how to feed, protect, like really shelter yourself? Would you really know how to do that?
I would really know
thought
how to
about
figure that shit out real fast.
that. Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna become a survivor real quick.
Yeah, honestly, it's like
But I feel like
You
white
with the
people.
shit, so you're not, bro.
I feel like certain groups of people, they know how to hunt, and I'm just like, that's
Not
never
around
a
here, bro.
thing. Like, that's never a thing with us. Like, we don't know how to really do
yeah,
that shit.
not all right for
Not
me.
in that manner.
Right.
You
For
know,
me, it's like it's community, yo. Like when you go through a shit like this, although I feel like this one was kind of mild, it's like one
It's mild now.
mild
ain't
now.
over yet.
It's
You
mild
know,
now.
like,
This
this
shit
one
just
was
started. It
kinda
happened a week
I
ago.
have my own theories.
We went from 1 to 30 cents
Right.
a week
Man, yo, you know how I work? Yo, this shit been happening for years, yo.
Where did Swan just go?
I don't know. But
It's
it's like,
he just gonna leave.
it made me want
Toilet paper.
Yeah, he probably went to steal some toilet paper.
It's like
This
yo,
conversation
you
made
got
me
to
wanna
check in with
stock
your
up.
family. My biggest things was checking in my family, make sure everybody was good, knowing that it's going to be a long haul type of thing. Just make sure we're prepared for that, and just the aspect of knowing people that I can connect with, and know people I want to check in with, and make sure we all good for real. But yeah, like you said, it is just beginning, so I am curious to see how this is going to roll out. Damn, another topic I want to bring up, or point. Donald Trump and his address.
I don't know what he said. I don't pay attention to what he says.
Did he make fun of the coronavirus?
He did
He
originally.
made
Yeah.
fun of it.
My old
Like
boss
that's a hoax.
was on the stand with Trump, representing
Yikes.
He said,
that
"What?"
place. Yeah.
We be forgetting you work for the feds.
Yeah. So and then Trump discredited him too. Yo, that shit was terrible. Yo. Then my man was like, honestly, all this shit should have happened a week ago. We out late. this is
Yeah.
old. But we're gonna edit all that part out.
Yeah.
We ain't need
I don't know. My thoughts
Yeah.
on this shit is really
Like,
Talking
shit.
on this nigga here, yeah.
yeah. If you worried about it now, it's too late. I think you should always be prepared for something to happen because
You never know what's gonna happen.
Stay ready so you don't have to
yeah,
get ready.
exactly.
Yeah.
Honestly, this is kind of where your tribe that you've built over the years. This is where you learn on who you could depend on, who you
Yeah.
can lean on.
Yeah.
And also, it's a matter of kind of like keeping as many windows as possible like closed or like blocked off, so you don't have too many entrances for this unpredictable virus to really get in, because it's really not too determined on how or where
You are not
can
discreet
carry
at
the
all.
Shit, so I've heard many different rumors as to it can stay on the surface for a couple days to a couple weeks to a couple hours. So
Yeah.
I think it's
About to
best
prep
to
like The
stay
Walking
informed
Dead.
and keep clean.
Godliness, cleanness next to godliness. Any last remarks?
I mean, as long as you, shit, whatever you gotta do,
Do whatever you got to do.
be prepared to do whatever you gotta do in any situation. Like, yeah, just in any situation. You know what I'm saying? Definitely, like you say, keep certain people close. Everybody you're concerned about, and if it ever becomes necessary, definitely have that community mindset where you band together for to support to make that stronghold for sure. In any situation, it gets that bad.
Yeah. Word to that.
Thank you for watching What's Good Bro podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment below. Also, make sure you check out the rest of our footage on our page.
Yeah, we got some dope content on Instagram as well. You can follow us there at WGB Podcast.
And please don't forget to listen to us on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. We come out every other week.
And remember, thank you.
Okay.